for.
Right. This is bearish for big tech, by the way. Like,
How so?
they've benefited greatly from not paying their employees enough. Like bargaining power shifting to employees and away from the companies is bad for margins in the long run. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, good luck to big tech. We're all rooting for you, as always. Vikesh says, "Hi, Andrew and Ben. Nearly 22 months later from my email to Sharp Tech about Apple F1 rights and the Vision Pro opportunity, it is finally happening. The Financial Times reports Apple is bidding for Formula One rights in the U.S. as its Brad Pitt movie becomes a hit. However," Vikesh cautions, "given the paucity of Vision Pro content since the launch, I don't have high hopes of Apple creating an innovative broadcast for the device like we discussed previously." Again, he's referencing an email he sent us nearly 2 years ago. Anyways, though, what do you think? Vikesh asks, does this make sense for Apple? What about F1? I also hope this is not a sign that Apple will spam poor iOS users with more F1 notifications and ads. That whole controversy, which you addressed on Dithering, was very funny to me because Apple spamming people with the wallet notification, it really got the Apple Twitter community in a lather. And I was kind of shocked by how outraged everyone was by that breach, when I'm outraged at Apple for like degrading its software performance over the last 5 years. And Apple Twitter doesn't seem to have as much of a problem with that. But man, oh man, that wallet notification really sent those guys into a tailspin.
You know what is the worst thing about that?
What?
I bought F1 tickets using Fandango and forgot to use the coupon. I was
You're
so mad.
10% off,
I
man.
can't believe it.
Well, listen, I know when you saw the F1 movie, which we'll get to momentarily, but I think you might have been a little bit too late to take advantage of the discount because it did say while supplies last on
that's
the notification.
right.
So you
In
might have
terms
been
and
out of
conditions
luck.
applied.
You could have been even more incensed by the ad. What do you think about the idea of F1 being an Apple TV Plus property moving forward?
I think it's a terrible idea.
I think it's a really bad idea for F1, right?
Yeah, F1 is growing by leaps and bounds, or at least was growing. MLS regrets their deal with Apple TV. No one knows about it. No one cares. Out of sight, out of mind. I think that's exactly what would happen, and they should make a deal with ESPN and stay where they are and be sort of generally available to most people. If not ESPN, then someone else. Netflix is the only streaming service I would consider if I were F1. And my interpretation of F1, particularly like the whole sprint race thing, like we've talked about, I think on here, how I hate sprint races suck. It's great to have one event to focus on. If you want to get qualifying, that's great. But then the race is on Sunday and it's an event and you can plan your weekend around it. You add on this stupid sprint race and it's just like there's too much stuff. But the justification is always, oh, it's for the fans at the event. They have more exciting things to sort of do X, Y, Z. This, by the way, I think is also wrong. The best way to experience an event is actually practice days and just walk everywhere and not feel like you have to pay attention. But so I feel like F1 doesn't understand the whole fan experience anyway. But to the extent you're focused on the at-track experience, which is where they do make most of their money, is these races pay huge fees to F1. Like, you need more fan interest broadly. You don't need to maximize your television deal. Yeah, exactly. So I think this would be a terrible idea from an F1 perspective. I think Apple should spend money on AI. So how about that? If you're gonna I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, from an Apple standpoint, I think F1 does have appeal because there's a built-in cult following, and you've got
it is
events.
A year-long event, so if you're going to subscribe, you're probably going to be there for the whole year. I can see the Apple angle for sure.
It's the exact sort of sport that makes sense to invest in if you're a streamer, and particularly if you're Apple and you're already trying to appeal to an upper-class consumer, the type of rich dipshit who becomes obsessed with F1. It does make sense for Apple's brand.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And is stuck here because Zuck hasn't sent him the check yet. Can't get a private plane off his island ever. in any event, I like it for Apple side, but my concerns are exactly the same as yours on F1 side, and particularly with F1's management. I do get the sense that they devised like the perfect formula to rocket their sport into a different stratosphere, and the people running that sport don't necessarily understand like how any of it came together and how and what
Right.
the
They
real
they
appeal
sort of
is.
completely lucked into this, like, yeah, this run.
Basically,
Yeah.
yeah, and like they wound up broadcasting on ESPN, I think for nothing a couple
Yep.
years ago, and that was a godsend for them because ESPN broadcast every single race. You probably started watching races on ESPN, and I don't know whether I would have if it had been something that I had to go find on a
Yep.
streamer and whatnot. And
Yep.
so I worry that their management is penny wise and pound foolish, and they will just take whoever writes the biggest check, and that will be Apple. But in any event, that's enough prelude before we get to your F1 review. Matt says, Andrew and Ben, long time, first time. Hollywood is back. A summer blockbuster starring Brad Pitt, racing, and Americans conquering a European institution with nothing but raw gumption and questionable ethics. What could be better? Do you have thoughts on the new F1 movie? Are you able to get over the lack of hardcore insight into the sport to be able to enjoy the action? Ben, do you have thoughts? I have some thoughts.
Well, I think I think there was a hardcore insight into the sport because they decided how many realities can we violate to make an entertaining movie,
Yep.
which is fine with me. I enjoyed the movie. I had a good time. My daughter, who was very much a younger version of me, which means significantly less mature and evolved in getting over sort of her pedantic asides, hated it because of all the things about it that
Oh.
were unrealistic. And like, no, you have to understand. And this, so yes, it was Top Gun in cars, and it was fun. And what I did like the best from a racing fan perspective, my favorite scene was the Porsche GT3 and the 24 Hours of Daytona, because
Okay.
you got a sense from that about how unstable these cars are at speed. Like it was like you
Yep.
just felt like it was gonna lose it at any time, which is the reality. Like the fastest cars are on the edge, like they're barely controllable. And Apple, speaking of the F1 thing, there's the stories about them doing like special iPhone cameras and stuff to like get a significant much higher resolution, like helmet cams and all those sort of things, so they could still run these cars at speed. So I thought
Yep.
all that part was super cool. This, like, the very premise of the story that a new team was expected to win a race in 3 years is farcical if you know anything about F1. No one's winning.
Mm-hmm.
The new Cadillac team's coming along. Guess what? They're not doing winning a race in the first 3 years, and no one's going to have any expectation that they do. It takes a much long time to sort of get to that point. So everything about it was ridiculous, but this makes me think generally. I
Yep.
enjoyed the movie, and why is it that maybe this is a me thing, maybe this is a broader thing, that I love sports. I watch sports all the time. And I don't watch very much scripted television. And
Yep.
I love the sort of random, the guy's email earlier, stochastic nature of it. Like you don't know, what's probably going to happen, but you don't know for sure. And the possibility that something amazing does happen and you're there to capture it is incredible. And there's a bit where I'm just like, for this movie, I was willing to go in and suspend disbelief and just have a good time. And you knew it was going to happen
Do
at
you
the
think
end.
that
I
comes with
still
age,
enjoyed
though?
it. Well,
Do
I
you
don't
think
know.
that because
There's
I
a bit
like
though, like, well, there's a bit like where it actually made me reflect on this about the people making this movie saw the need to do all kinds of absurd things to make a better movie.
yeah.
And I think I can understand all the choices. Like Brad Pitt purposely crashing into cars, definitely not okay in F1. That happened previously. A guy got a lifetime ban who's now back in the sport, but regardless, but it made for a more enjoyable movie, right? And why
Yeah.
is it that there's this difference in what makes for enjoyable entertainment versus reality? Why does that make something more entertaining? Because why is reality, what's the difference of what makes reality compelling versus what makes something scripted compelling? And it almost, I felt like like, why do I like the unscripted random nature of sports and feel like watching a scripted show is a job? And there's a bit
Mm,
where like I'm signing myself up to some, like, there actually is no randomness of what's going to happen at the end of Succession, like
yeah.
a show I famously gave up on halfway through because I was like, this feels like work. Like, I don't know. For me, I just made me think about this. Like, I was willing to unplug for this one, just enjoy it, and I did enjoy it. And
Yeah.
but my biggest takeaway was almost like this philosophical thought about like what's compelling, what's interesting, why does scripted entertainment need to be absurd, which it by and large is. And I don't know.
Well, it sounds like you're doing some soul searching, and the takeaway from F1 is you need to unplug more often, let go and just go for a ride. Don't worry about the details. Enjoy yourself. Because that, honestly, the reason I asked about whether that comes with age, as I get older, I could imagine myself in your daughter's shoes,
Yep.
18 years old, have fallen in love with F1 over the last 3 or 4 years, psyched to go see an F1 movie, and then see them just like butcher the strategy during the
Right.
middle of the race. And I don't really understand that, like, because they made this movie to be a giant commercial for F1. And so why wouldn't you be a little bit more committed to realism and have a little bit
I
more
did think
respect
about
for
that.
the
Why is that? Yeah,
audience?
why is F1 so in on something that is such an unrealistic depiction in so
Like,
many
imagine
respects?
watching a race after seeing that movie and
Right.
being like,
Why doesn't he just
okay,
intentionally crash into someone?
yeah,
Wait,
I
why are they
thought you
worried
could
about
just
a pit stop lasting 2 seconds longer? Brad Pitt sat in the pits for like a minute.
yeah, and so as I've gotten older though, I just am like, look, I know what this is going to be, and the question is whether it can deliver on those expectations, but I'm not going to sit there the entire time wishing it was something else. And I had a very good time. If it were a commercial, I do want to reiterate my point from last summer, which is that the original title for this movie was Apex, and Apex would have been a better title, and it would have felt less like an explicit commercial and might have had more cultural appeal, more of an enduring appeal over the next couple of years if it had been called
It
Apex
would have played
rather
well
than
because the team name
F1.
and also Brad Pitt reaching the apex sort of
And it's
thing.
the
Yeah,
apex of racing.
yeah,
Exactly. It all
yep.
came together. So I was sitting there watching the end of that
That's
movie.
I'm being
Spoiler
right
alert,
points for
by the
Andrew.
way.
Yeah, I think that's
Um,
right.
yeah, it would have been great. And
Hey, we
as
put it at
far
the end.
as
If you listen through to there, sorry, you deserve to have the spoiled.
that's exactly
We put it at
no,
the end
and
of the podcast for a reason.
It's also been a couple weeks since it's been out. If people haven't seen it, I would recommend it though. Whether
Yeah,
you're a racing fan
just
or
like we
not,
recommended Top Gun 2. Like it's exact same director, very similar sort of experience.
yeah. And F1 has made over $300 million after its release 2 weeks ago. That's global gross. And how Apple makes back its money, Apple's investment in the project is speculative. People have thrown out $1 billion in terms of the mark that they need to clear. I'm not sure, but I think commercially it's been more successful than just about anybody expected it to be, and the success continues all over the world as we record this. So we'll see. You mentioned that first scene. I was sitting there. It's funny with sports movies. As someone who's been a sports fan his entire life, I was in sports media full time for about a decade. I can tell within the first like 90 seconds of a sports movie whether they got it right and whether I'm going to enjoy myself. Like going to see Creed a couple years ago, like instantly I knew, like, all right, they understand the spectacle of what they're trying to do with boxing. And F1, Joseph Kaczynski, the director, that first scene at Daytona, I was like, I know this isn't F1, but they are capturing the adrenaline
Yeah,
of
this
what this sport is
totally.
supposed to be.
No,
And
and I think it was the best scene in the movie. Like again, I think just more. There's almost a bit where because they were filming on F1 cars. F1 cars are so glued to the ground and are so stable, it almost doesn't quite give the same sense of speed that you get from. This is a friend of mine who's not in
yeah,
F1. That's actually his complaint. He's like, you don't properly appreciate what it feels like to go fast. He's of course likes to drive Porsche GT3s. He's like they're too good. He's like you got that right at the beginning. Like it was like jittery, and you're like, are they going to crash them out in like the very first scene of the film? Like, you weren't sure. That delivered, I think, what it feels like to go really fast. So
It
that
was
was
so
pretty
good.
cool.
And it was also the first movie I had seen in IMAX for about 10 years or so. I think the last IMAX movie I saw was Interstellar. And the IMAX experience delivers on all fronts. So if you're going to see it, make sure you see it in IMAX. And if you wait to watch it on Apple TV, I believe they're delaying the release on Apple TV. So Apple has finally gotten the windowing note that we've been giving to streamers everywhere, and they're delaying it until I believe mid-fall. I don't know if you're watching it at home, it may not land as much as it did in an IMAX
it's
theater.
definitely no. I can't believe you didn't see Top Gun 2 in IMAX, but yeah, no, it's definitely, or Dune. Did you see the Dune movies?
No, I did see the Dune movie, but I didn't see it in
Oh,
IMAX.
and you call yourself a tech podcaster.
I know, it's terrible.
Well, the
I'm
great
not gonna
irony
make
of
that
Dune,
mistake
the
again,
great irony
though.
of Dune being called a tech movie is the entire premise of Dune is that computers were banned. So
The reason Dune is a tech movie is because everybody that works in tech is a giant nerd, and Dune is a nerdy thing. And I didn't like the first Dune. The second Dune was great, and I
the
guess they're
first one was
making a
better than the
third
second
one,
one.
so
Jeez.
I'll look out for that one. Denis Villeneuve, the new Bond director, did a great job with the second Dune movie.